So we're here today to talk to you guys about happiness. We're doing a whole course that's going to have a whole bunch of different tutorials. But in order to do the happiness section, we figured that the best way to start it off would be to define happiness. And it came from this book called Be Happy by Robert Holden. And it is an absolutely incredible book. In the book, it poses the question, what is happiness? I'm going to explain the key parts of what he talks about, and then we're going to run through a couple of the exercises. In the book, he talks about how it was summer of '86 and he had just moved to New York, and he ended up going into this law firm and he's working there, and they had a test, and it was a time test. And he needed to erase something that he wrote down, but he didn't have an eraser. And he's from England, and they call them rubbers over there. And so he goes to the guy next to him. He's like, hey, man, you got a rubber? And the guy's like, no, man, I don't bring rubbers to work with me. And then he goes, I really, really need one bad. And so he stands up in the middle of the room, and he says, does anybody have a rubber? I really need a rubber. And everybody started laughing and cheering for him. And they're like, yeah, Robert, who are you taking out to lunch? That sounds great. It's a really good analogy for starting it off because it shows you the power of the definition of a word. Where he was from, that meant something totally different.
That meant eraser.
And so in order to go deeper, he has a couple activities that he has people do. The one that we're going to do, it's called the happiness circle. He says it's important to define happiness because your definition of happiness influences every other significant decision in your life. And many people have never defined it.
That's huge.
Yeah, it goes through a few different questions. The first one is kind of topical. In part one, you just begin with happiness is. And then you just start naming all the things that happiness is, right? Just off the top of your head, that real cerebral happiness is blah.
Happiness is playing with puppies.
Happiness is snuggling with a really cute girl.
Ooh, happiness is gambling.
Happiness is Louboutin shoes.
Ooh, happiness is threesomes.
Happiness is a brand new car.
Ooh, nice. Happiness is copious amounts of chocolate.
Happiness is a beautiful sunset.
Happiness is achieving a goal that you've been working towards.
Happiness is watching Deadpool.
Ooh,
Got the socks.
nice.
There may be other things that are hidden in here.
You really like Deadpool.
I just want Ryan Reynolds to come on the podcast.
Would that make you
honestly.
happy?
That would make me happy.
Happiness is Ryan Reynolds.
Boom. I think that was a good example of a lot of kind of the surface topical ones where you just start spitballing and you don't really think about it. And that's kind of the other problem is if you ask someone what's their definition of happiness, they're going to be quick to answer because they feel like they should have a definition. If you don't have a definition of happiness, don't be quick to answer it. Actually make some time to dive into what your definition of happiness is.
Well, and how can you actually hit a target that you don't exactly know where it is, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to hit that target?
The second phase of the happiness circle, it goes true happiness is. And so it takes it a little bit deeper. So true happiness is.
True happiness is being honest with what you want and curating your life to follow.
True happiness is enjoying the present moment.
That one's super good. True happiness is gratitude, being thankful.
True happiness is love and experiencing the emotion of love. So that takes it a little bit deeper, asking yourself, true happiness is blank.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the final part of it is my favorite definition of happiness is
that no matter what the external situation was, being able to be grateful and present in that moment.
That's a really good one. to me, true happiness is this element that exists all the time. It's always there. It's always something you can tap into. There's a beauty in every part of the present moment. So we're going to remove what happiness isn't, right?
Okay, yeah. That sounds good.
I shouldn't say that. Like if someone else out there wants to define happiness as these things, they can. Totally. But it should be a conscious choice to include these things in your definition of happiness. But the things that we're going to remove from the definition are pleasure. That would be like sensory happiness.
Right. Pleasure would be like fleeting things like cookies and whiskey and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And threesomes, which are great. But it's like
Fleeting.
a pleasure in the moment. Really good food, super pleasurable.
Right.
You taste it so good. But that's not what we're saying happiness is. The other one that we're removing from our definition of happiness is satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So many people include satisfaction in what they would say happiness is.
But then that's actually putting it off. Like, okay, I'm going to be 120 pounds and that's my goal, and I'm not going to be happy until I hit that goal.
Totally. And then they either hit it or don't hit it. If they do hit it, then they've achieved something and they have this moment of satisfaction. And so achievement would also be in that group of satisfaction.
Right.
So if you do something and then you get a result, we're not including that in the definition of happiness that we're going for.
Okay.
Here. And then what we're going to dive into is describing joy. He says in here that joy is the soul of happiness. He describes these different parts to it. He says it has consistency. When they tune into it, it's not out there, it's in here, and it's always there. And so if you pay attention to joy, it's constantly there. It also has creativity. Upon discovering this joy, many people experience a greater sense of creativity that rushes through them. And he likes to describe it as unreasonable. And that's something that I've totally experienced over and over and over since I've defined it. It doesn't have to be circumstantial. You don't have to do this or do this in order to be happy if you're able to tap into joy. In the present moment, there's all these beautiful little things, and a lot of the times it's irrational. He says, I like to describe joy as unreasonable happiness because it doesn't seem to need a reason. It is happiness that is based on nothing. In other words, it doesn't need a cause or effect in order to exist.
Right. So you can just be in your everyday normal life experiencing actual happiness.
He also says it's untroubled. And so unlike pleasure and satisfaction, joy does not have an opposite. It doesn't swing up and down as our moods do, and it doesn't wrestle with positive and negatives. If pleasure's twin is pain and satisfaction's twin is dissatisfaction, then joy's twin is love. There's not really an opposite for it because it's an ever-present thing, which is crazy to think about. And some of you might have never heard this concept before. And so if it doesn't make sense, I would question it and try and dive deeper, because I did. And then I started noticing in all the moments in my life that I really considered true happiness, what was this underlying thing? And was it always there? And just posing that question made me realize that it was. Then I started noticing there's beautiful little things in every moment in life, and you can always find the joy. A lot of the times it is just totally unreasonable. It pops out of nowhere. It can just be a beautiful little rock that you see on the ground, and all of a sudden you feel blissed out. It's like, where did that come from? You didn't really accomplish it. You just noticed something. And what you noticed, I would say, was joy in that moment. He also says the fifth one is enough. Joy, in that moment, it feels like enough. You don't necessarily need more and more and more of it. It in itself feels complete.
Totally. Okay.
Now that I've broken it down to having this really cool little piece be my definition of happiness, it allows me to be way happier more often. Where before, when I had pleasure and I had satisfaction included in my definition, I was putting off my happiness and I wasn't paying attention to joy. And so I missed all of these little things.
Right. Well, I feel like, too, something else that happens is people usually have an expectation of where they want to be, who they want to be, what they want to look like. And so they have all these expectations placed on themselves where they aren't noticing what they have in the moment. They don't notice how lucky they are, or like how amazing what they have actually is. When you're just focused on everything that you don't have, then there is no room for joy. You don't notice that it's there.
Yeah. And when you're chasing pleasure and when you're chasing satisfaction, then you always want more and more and more of it.
Right, because it's just like a little hit, but it's not substantial enough to satisfy you.
Definitely.
It seems like most of the time when we ask people what their definition of happiness is, they don't have an answer. Like they haven't sat down and actually thought about it ever. It is probably one of the most important things you can define in your life.
We hope that you actually spend some time, actually kind of dive deep into what's honest inside you and come up with your own answer for what happiness is. And from this point in time on, you guys will know that when we say happiness, we're talking about joy.
Yeah. We really hope that this video and our other videos inspire you and add value to your life. Thanks for watching, guys.
Love you guys. Bye.